The last thing I am thinking about is Dan Lanning. We are so far away from that right now. We are focused on us. That's what Kirby Smart said when asked about Dan and the Oregon Ducks. It gave me an opportunity or a reminder to check out some of Oregon's games from a season ago. And if look, Georgia's a 17-point favorite in this game. They should not lose the game. That's all there is to it. But the fact that Oregon's got a brand new head coach, a new quarterback, they're traveling across the country. They are playing as tough a road game as you can play. And yes, this is a road game because it's in a dome against the defending national champions, if there's such a thing. This is a real, what's the word? Oregon really certainly should not win this game. But, um, I got a chance to watch some of Oregon last night. I'm not a football coach. That's not what I do for a living. I do watch a lot of football games, however, because I think it's part of my job. And my concern for Oregon, first of all, they do not have the same quarterback they did a season ago because Bo Nix is going to be dealing with the Dogs for the fourth year in a row. Um, but they had a quarterback a season ago who wasn't dissimilar from Bo Nix as it relates to mobility. So it gives you some look into what Oregon could or should be like when they face the Dogs in Atlanta. And, I didn't just watch the Utah game. I really specifically watched the UCLA game. And the reason why is because it was on the road and it was a game they won, um, and it was a close game. So I think to me the thing that sort of jumped out is you didn't immediately get pressure on the quarterback, and I think that's the one thing to watch as we go into this game. What kind of pressure can this defensive line get on Bo Nix? They consistently got pressure on him in the past, but what kind of real pressure can you get on him? A season ago, um, it didn't feel like UCLA got a lot of pressure on him. And by the way, this game was a game where UCLA got out in front, 14-0, and then lost. I think in overtime. I can't remember exactly, but it was a back and forth game for sure. The thing about it was that when you watch the offensive and defensive lines, Oregon was not blowing UCLA off the line. Neither of these teams really were knocking the other back in a way that was pretty noticeable to me. Neither team really ran for a lot. They both had about 115 yards or so. Uh, um, Oregon threw on UCLA a little bit more, but I guess I wonder in watching that one game and taking out the two Utah games because Oregon really just got blistered by Utah twice. Those games were not good they were not a good look for Oregon. I mean, let's not forget that they went to Salt Lake with I think the number two or three team in the country, maybe three. Yeah, they were number three team in the country. They lost 38-7. The Ducks did not run the ball effectively in any way. They had 63 yards rushing. They had 200 yards against them rushing. And, it wasn't a huge deal because they were going to have the capability to play the Utes later. But the problem was that the same basic thing happened. Utah ran for almost 200. Oregon ran for about 60 or 70 yards. They just got their brains kicked in. I think physically that's going to be the problem for Oregon is uh, they're going to have a tough time matching the physicality of Georgia. I'll see Georgia's practice later today, and I can assure you that while I'm grading on a scale, I will come to y'all and say they don't look like they did a season ago on the defensive line, and that will be true. But these are all relative, right? I mean, what's it going to look like for Georgia um, against Oregon? To me, I think they will have success, but you got to do it and prove it. And Kirby's sitting here saying correctly, we're so far away from that right now. We are focused on us. And that's the best way to be during what's being called no longer fall camp, but training camp. Make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION today. A lot of people are taking advantage of this. We have the 2022 preview. It is still available for now. You get it for free when you buy DAWGSTRUCTION. The link is down below. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. All the books that were ordered over the weekend are going out on Monday, and there are plenty of them. So take advantage before I run out of the magazine. I think Dan Lanning, knowing everything possible about Georgia, being in the building since 18, of course that helps with his. I mean, that's 4 years of being at Georgia with 3 years and one game of calling plays. Um, he knows Georgia for sure. He recruited the defensive side of the ball. I think what I wonder is in the amount of time that he's gotten, which is not even 9 months yet, can he really put together a team that would be able to overpower this Georgia bunch that on the offensive line in particular, I think it's going to be a hard job for Oregon to push Georgia around. Now, Oregon could have, we'll see if Oregon has a decent run game against the Dogs. I want to see this Georgia front seven before I proclaim them anything because we just don't know what we're getting into here. But I think it could be tough for Oregon to slow down the Dogs' offense. You know, on the Oregon defensive side of the ball, they gave up 24 to Fresno, 28 to Ohio State, which is pretty good, really. 31 to Stanford, 31 to UCLA, 29 to Colorado. This is when they were kind of really playing their best ball. And then at the end of the year, you know, they gave up 38 to Utah, 29 to Oregon State, 38 to Utah, and then 47 to Oklahoma. I would say there's no real shame in giving up 40 on OU, but that was a chaotic game. You know, they didn't have a head. Neither side had a head coach. But whenever you're allowing 47 points, that's not an ideal situation to be in. I think the other thing is cannot if the physicality of Utah. So Utah and Kentucky are not so far from one another as it relates to how physical they are. I would be very curious to see Kentucky play Oregon and wonder who I would. It would depend on where that game's played, but I think Kentucky would have more than its fair chance of winning that game against Oregon if they played. I just think this is going to be a lot for Oregon um, to overcome. Now, the caveat to that is playing at the Horseshoe against Ohio State is a different situation. That is a very difficult place to play. I've been there. Um, the the thing for Ohio State was their defense sucked. I mean, Oregon ran for 270 yards on them, and Ohio State really could not effectively run against Oregon. So it doesn't matter if you're on the road if you can run. Um, it's it solves a lot of problems. I mean, in that game they got out to they didn't get out. I mean, in the third going into the fourth quarter they were up 28 to 14. They were not so far from blowing Ohio State out. But when you're running for 270 yards, that should happen. And you know, Michigan later in the year really manhandled Ohio State along the line. So that's the part where if this were the 21 Georgia team against these guys, I think Georgia would win going away. I think if you want to find out ways where things can get complicated, I just want to see Georgia's off defensive line and see what we're really dealing with in terms of expectations. Jalen Carter is back. Got plenty. There are plenty of bodies. Okay, but you did. And Kirby said it last night, or yet not that long ago. We lost a lot of really good players. We've got a lot of really good players to replace them with, and he's right. I mean, Ingram Dawkins is a big. I mean, that kid from Gaffney looks the part for sure. Jalen Carter. Everyone's heard me continue to ramble on about Zion Logue. I mean, they've got guys. Bear Alexander looks the part. He just doesn't look like Jordan Davis. And that's the part that I'm having a little bit of time getting used to is all of that. But this Georgia team is going to have its opportunity to stamp its way at the start of the season, showing everybody, in theory, that they are still a formidable team to deal with. The other thing to keep in mind is Georgia hasn't always had the world's greatest defense or college football's greatest defense. They had other defenses too, and they were pretty good as well. Now, those were Dan Lanning defenses, but that 19 defense was legit for sure. So it's not like Georgia only had it in 21. They have consistently had an extremely good defense from 17 on.